Today we will be looking at significant figures. So we use significant figures in chemistry to show how precise a number is. So a number with 3 significant figures will be a more accurate value than a number with only 2 significant figures. Then how do we determine the number of significant figures in a number? There are 4 simple rules that we can use to determine the number of significant figures. So the first rule is all non-zeros are significant. So if, for example, if we look at the number 234, 234 will have 3 significant figures because the first rule states that all non-zeros are significant. 2 is a non-zero, 3 is a non-zero, and 4 is a non-zero. So 234 will have 3 significant figures. Okay, let's look at another example. Say we have, let's say we have 3,245. This number will have 4 significant figures because rule number 1 stated that all non-zeros are significant. 3, 2, 4, 5. These numbers are all non-zeros, so therefore we can say that this number has 4 significant figures. Now that we looked at non-zero numbers, you guys might be wondering, well, what about zeros? Are they significant or not? Don't worry, because now the next 3 rules will focus on exactly that. So, rule number 2 is zeros between non-zero numbers are always significant. Let's look at the number 303. From rule number 1, we already know that this 3 and this 3, they are significant because rule number 1 said that all non-zeros are significant. Now, focusing on rule number 2, it says that zeros between non-zero numbers are always significant. This 0 right here is between this 3 and this 3. So this 0 will also be significant as the 0 is between 2 non-zero numbers. So the number 303 will have 3 significant figures. Okay, let's look at another example. Let's say we have the number 4004. So immediately we already know that this 4 and this 4, they are significant because they are non-zero numbers. And from rule number 2, we can also say that these 2 zeros between the 2 non-zero numbers are significant because that's what rule 2 states. So number 4004 will have 4 significant figures. Okay, moving on to rule number 3. Rule number 3 says zeros before non-zero numbers are never significant. So we should watch out for the never. Okay, so if we have a number, let's say we have 0003. This number will only have 1 significant figure. That's because this 3, a non-zero, is always significant, but these zeros in front of the non-zero number, they are never significant. As stated above, zeros before non-zero numbers are never significant. Okay, now let's look at a more complicated example. Let's say we have 0.00404. Okay, this number right here, let's start with the non-zero numbers. So this 4 and this 4. These will always be significant. And we know this from rule number 1. And this 0 between the 2 non-zero numbers are also always significant, stated in rule number 2. Okay, now we need to use rule number 3 to determine if these 3 zeros are significant. And we can ignore the decimal right here because the rules don't mention anything about decimal points yet. So rule number 3 states that all zeros before non-zero numbers are never significant. So just ignore the decimal, and since all 3 zeros are before a non-zero number, they will not be significant. So from this we can say that this 4, this 0, and this 4, those 3 numbers are significant. So the number 0.00404 will have only 3 significant figures. Now, rule number 4 is related to decimal points. So rule number 4, our last rule, states that zeros after non-zero numbers are only significant when there is a decimal point in the number. This might sound confusing at first, but if we look at some examples, you guys will understand what this is saying. So let's write down 2 numbers. First, let's write down 30, and then the second number will be 3.0. Okay, first looking at the number 30, we know that the 3 is significant because it's a non-zero number. But let's look at the 0 after the 3. Rule number 4 states that zeros after non-zero numbers are only significant when there is a decimal point in the number. So looking at 30, we don't see a decimal point in the number 30. So that will mean that the 0 after the 3 will not be significant because there isn't a decimal point present in the number 30. So this will only have one significant figure. Okay, now looking at 3.0, for the same reason we know that the 3 is significant. Now looking at the 0 after the number 3, different from the number 30, we can see a decimal point in the number. It's 3.0. So rule number 4 states that zeros after non-zero numbers are only significant when there is a decimal point in the number. We see a decimal point in the number 3.0. So therefore, this 0 right here is also significant. So 3.0 will have 2 significant figures. We just say sig figs to shorten how you say significant figures. Okay, but yeah, so 30 will only have 1 because there is no decimal point present, and therefore the 0 is not significant. And 3.0 will have 2 significant figures because there is a decimal point present and the 0 is after a non-zero number. Okay, so those were the 4 significant figures rules. We can now use those 4 rules to determine the number of significant figures in a number. In the next video, we will do more practice problems on determining the number of significant figures in a number.